Hey everybody, Chris, Steve, and John from SUMURI here. This is the first part in a 4-part series about sequential processing with RECON LAB, so stay tuned. Hey everybody, so this is part 1 in a 4-part series about sequential processing and why it's such a big deal in RECON LAB. So today we are going to cover one of the main features, but before we do that, we kind of want to talk about the importance of sequential processing and why we made it such a major part of our tool. So traditionally, a computer forensic investigation would just be sort of acquiring a device and then putting it in a tool and bookmarking all the important events and calling it a day. But we really wanted to shake that up and make the reporting process much better. So we included sequential processing. So, John, in your opinion, what do you think sequential processing is?
I mean, sequential processing to me is kind of just getting all your ducks in a row, right? So it's making things more timeline based, and that's kind of the big features that we put in for it. They're all surrounded around timelines. So you want to be able to see all the events as they happen, so you really understand exactly what's going on.
Yeah, so when we designed RECON LAB, it was designed with sequential processing in mind, and it goes back to just human psychology. It's like everybody understands events in a certain order because we live in a linear timeline. No one has figured out time travel yet that I know of, even though it's theoretically possible, but it hasn't, happened too often, or frequently. So we live in a linear timeline. So our brains have learned to process things sequentially. Like this event occurs, and that gives us information about another event, and that gives us more context about another event. So that's the way, if you're presenting a report or information to a court of law, which is computer forensics, right? What we're doing here, and we're trying to help you with that. You have to do it in a sequential format. That's the best way to present information to court. And a lot of other tools lack that capability of being very granular about the type of timestamps and events and artifacts and putting them in order so that we can see them. So we have several different ways of doing this in RECON LAB.
Yeah. The first way that we wanted to show you guys was a feature that we have called Super Timeline. So Super Timeline, whenever you load into RECON LAB, you can access it really quickly. You can just go ahead and hit this little clock up at the top, and boom, you're in the Super Timeline interface. So just going to run through it real quick. You have 2 different output formats. You have SQLite and CSV. The only limitation of CSV, though, is that you can only have so many rows in it. So the big things that you want to look for are right here. So we have 3 options as to what Super Timeline will pull. You get file system records, artifact plugin records, or you can get both. Now, John, you have an example of why Super Timeline will be super good?
Oh yeah, so something like departing employee investigation kind of thing. So like if you have an employee and you need to figure out exactly what happened between a certain amount of dates that they did on a machine that they had, and you had an image in the machine, and you just knew, okay, well they were departing or they weren't allowed to take anything off the machine between September 5th and September 10th, and they still had the machine, you can just generate a super timeline and see exactly all the activity that happened on that image between those dates.
Yeah, and this becomes important too with the selection process because you have 3 options here, right? File system records, artifact plugin records, and both. So what exactly are those? File system records are basically going to be your standard timestamps, but if you're dealing with a Mac case, which RECON LAB is, specializes in Mac investigations as well as others, but it'll actually get those extended attribute timestamps, so the proper timestamps that the Mac uses, that's going to be included. The other solutions pull POSIX timestamps, which is going to give you incorrect information if you're not sure what you're looking at. For example, would be access times, right? So people see access times and they just automatically assume a human is accessing it, not the case with the Mac. So you have to look at the proper access times on a Mac, so we pull that information for you. And as far as artifact plugin records, that's going to be our timestamps that are actually specific to artifacts that we pull. So we pull out thousands of artifacts from Windows, from Mac, from iOS and Android and Google. All that is included in this timeline. So you have a choice between just file system records or artifacts, or the last option here is both. And when you put all that information together in one singular timeline where you can actually see the events in the order they occurred, it makes life so much easier to even it would change the outcome of a case. And it's very amazing.
Yeah, so we also just wanted to show you how it would output, really, and what you'd be looking at after you run Super Timeline. So right here we have file system timestamps. We ran this beforehand just to save a little bit of time, but as you can see, it really just lists everything down second by second of what happened, what changes were made during a certain period of time. Really powerful. We also have, just real quick, we ran the artifact timestamps. And the artifact timestamps do exactly the same thing. They let you run through a specific time period that you specify and just run through exactly second by second everything that happened, all of the changes that were made, and really, like Steve said, it can completely change the outcome of the case. So, yeah, I think that's it, and stay tuned for part 2 where we're going to feature artifact timelines. So, thank you everybody for watching, and have a great day and stay safe.
All right, take care.